Now, we have a little idea of what we want in respect to our movement system. I can click around, I can move across this nav mesh. Let's start to put together a little bit of a short overview document, which is the first document that we would use for our game. So inside of the assets folder, I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'm just going to call it documents. Now this is where you put your art book, your design documents, and other things. So I'm going to create another folder here called design docs. So I'm going to right click, show and explore, and I'm going to use Microsoft Word for this. So let's go ahead and do that. Microsoft Word document and overview. And this really is just the high level overview of certain things in the game. Now, what you generally want to do here is within this document, you want to break it into essentially what happens in each level and a high level narrative. So in one sentence, 1 to 2 sentences, you want to write generally what the premise of the game is. So for me, I always like the idea of a psychologist. It's like a paradigm shift. So for example, like I love how in F. Scott Fitzgerald's novels, the author or the main character is chasing something, and more often than not, they don't get it, or they come so close to getting it that um, it's the whole premise of the story is that chase, and when they finally get it, it slips out of their fingers. So think about the Great Gatsby and his love. So I have a psychologist who is trying to get over and understand their own heartache from when their great love left them. So within my point and click adventure, you play the role of a psychologist, and you're walking around and traveling this environment, and you're picking up these puzzling pieces and trying to put them together to figure out why. Um, and I'm going to make it a male because I'm going to write. Generally, we try to write about the things we know and research, right? And uh, so anyway, you want to delve deep into your own life. So the very beginning, we start off in our environment in the very first level. So, and I'm breaking this up into just kind of level chunks, right? So I like the idea of scene one as level one because I like to think more narratively. You really could phrase this any way you want. Like level one, I'm making it scene one. The environment that we're in is the doctor's office, um, and the uh, and the overlying goal or the game mechanic really is puzzle solving. And the puzzle that I'm trying to solve. So let's go ahead and start breaking this into subsections. So something like this is usually pretty good. So we do puzzle solving. And when we think about puzzle solving, a lot of times we're like, oh, well, you're fitting these pieces together. You want to go more specific than that. So just in, like, what am I trying to teach the user that can be used to build puzzles later? So for me, I want to teach them how to collect objects in the scene. And then how I'll do that is collectible objects have certain parameters, right? They can be highlighted, they're animated, sounds attached. So you can see this can get, and each one of these components ends up becoming either one or several scripts, right? So what is the first element that they're going to pick up in this puzzle solving select system? Well, this is the primary game mechanic, right? But so once you have all of these in place, right? Puzzle solving to collect objects in the scene, click blah blah blah. What is the first element? So below the game mechanic, we really just make it game mechanic one. Pick up passport. And what I do here is I say, okay, my passport then needs to be highlighted, animated, and have a sound attached to it. And then for me, this is enough for scene one, right? And so when we go back to our Unity scene, here we are in our study, and we need to gather reference on what our doctor's office is going to look like and where they're standing. So um, we mentioned the bus terminal here. So I'm going to go ahead and start to think about my art now, my level art. So inside of the assets folder here, I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call this art. And within this folder, I'm going to create another folder. And depending on your spelling, G-R-E-Y or G-R-A-Y, depending on where you're at, these are just gray boxes. And my first gray box, essentially, is going to be that doctor's office. So I think for now, what you can do is you go to Game Object, and as we go into our Pro Builder window here, we go to New Shape. As we begin to build these pieces, right, the way that we get them into that gray box folder is eventually we'll have one or more pieces. So I'm going to hit Control D here, and say we select two of these. In here, we'll eventually merge our doctor's office together, and then we just drag it into our gray box here. And the power behind this, by creating these prefabs, is I can just drag them back into the scene, and you can see they pop up. And I can export this to a program like Maya or Blender to further refine it later. So in the next video, what we'll start to do is further flesh out and model our environment and do a little bit of coding.